It was the middle of the afternoon when Malik Henderson stepped into the courtroom, feeling like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. His crisp black suit fit him well, but it didn't hide the nerves creeping up his spine. This wasn't just another day at work or another day in a courtroom. This was his life. This was the day his identity, his dignity, his very worth would be tested. Malik wasn't just a man fighting for his rights. He was a black man in a room filled with people who weren't used to seeing someone like him stand up for himself. He was a young lawyer, only 29, who had risen from humble beginnings. He was determined to change the perception of what it meant to be a black man in a profession where people like him were too often underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed. And today, that very fight would be tested. His opponent was Gregory Leclerc, a seasoned defense attorney known for his arrogance and sharp tongue. He was also notorious for using race to his advantage, relying on subtle bias to manipulate cases in his favor. Malik had faced Leclerc in court before, but this was different. This wasn't just about legal expertise. It was about the mockery he had endured since entering the courtroom earlier that morning. As Malik made his way to his seat, he felt the stares. He couldn't help but notice the way some of the jurors glanced at him, their expressions a mixture of surprise and, in some cases, discomfort. They weren't used to seeing a man who looked like him speaking with the poise and confidence that came with years of hard work. But what made it worse was the mockery he had already faced. Gregory Leclerc had already made his move. From the moment Malik had walked in, the subtle digs had begun. "Interesting," Leclerc had said loudly, just enough for the jury to hear. "A man of your background, and yet you speak so well." He had smirked as he said it, the words laced with a hidden venom. It was a typical tactic: undermine Malik's credibility by questioning his intelligence, his language, and his worth. But that wasn't the worst part. As Malik had spoken to the court, Leclerc had mockingly mimicked his accent. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, I can't quite understand him. Could you repeat that?" His voice was exaggerated, thick with mockery, and some of the jurors had actually chuckled. The insult wasn't just about mocking his accent. It was a slap in the face to everything Malik had worked for. It was an attempt to degrade him, to reduce him to the stereotype that many believed black men like him were destined to live out. And for a moment, just a fleeting moment, Malik felt the sting. But then something shifted inside him. Malik had grown up in a neighborhood where he was taught to stand tall, to fight back, and to rise above the expectations that others placed on him. He wasn't just here to defend his case. He was here to defend himself, his identity, and the honor of every person who had ever been dismissed because of the way they spoke, the color of their skin, or the circumstances of their birth. As Leclerc prepared to continue with his line of questioning, Malik took a deep breath. He felt the eyes of the room on him, the tension thick in the air, but he was no longer afraid. He was ready. "Your Honor," Malik said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade, "I've heard enough." The judge, a stern middle-aged man named Judge Daniels, looked up from his papers, his expression one of curiosity. The murmurs in the courtroom quieted as everyone turned their attention to Malik. "I respectfully ask for a moment," Malik continued, his voice steady and unshaken. "I believe we need to address the behavior of Mr. Leclerc." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Henderson, what do you mean?" Malik didn't hesitate. He stood tall, every inch of him exuding the confidence that had been earned through years of hard work, overcoming obstacles, and standing firm in the face of adversity. "I've endured a lot of disrespect in this courtroom today. I've been mocked, belittled, and reduced to something less than human based on my accent. It's an insult to my intelligence and my character. Mr. Leclerc may think he's being clever, but all he's done is expose the ugly truth about how some people see individuals who don't fit into their narrow, limited view of the world. I am not a caricature. I am not a stereotype. I am a man with the same rights, the same dignity, and the same ability to succeed as anyone else in this room." A ripple of surprise spread through the courtroom. Leclerc's smug smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "You dare to challenge me, Henderson?" Leclerc scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "You may have your degree, but you still sound." "I may sound the way I do, but I speak the truth, and I speak with conviction," Malik interrupted, his eyes blazing. "And if you think for 1 second that I will allow you to use my voice, my accent, to discredit me or anyone who looks like me, you're gravely mistaken." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge appeared taken aback, unsure how to respond. Malik had made it clear. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight for his dignity, his identity, and the recognition of his worth. Malik turned to the jury, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I have worked tirelessly to be here. I didn't get here because of luck. I didn't get here because of handouts. I'm here because I earned my place through sheer grit, determination, and perseverance. My accent does not define me. My skin color does not define me. My character, my actions, my intellect, those are the things that define who I am." The jury, who had been silent and unsure, began to stir. Malik could see it in their eyes. They were listening. They were seeing him for who he truly was, not just a person to be judged based on where he came from or how he spoke. They were seeing the real Malik Henderson. Leclerc, visibly flustered, opened his mouth to retort, but the judge held up a hand, signaling him to be quiet. "Mr. Leclerc," Judge Daniels said, his voice calm but firm, "I think it's clear we need to keep this court proceeding professional and respectful. I will not tolerate personal attacks on any party involved in this case." Malik felt a surge of relief. He had done it. He had stood up for himself, not just in front of the judge or the jury, but in front of everyone who had ever doubted him. And in that moment, he knew something powerful. He had reclaimed his voice. The rest of the trial continued, but the dynamic had shifted. The courtroom was no longer a place where Malik was a target. It was a place where his voice had been heard, where he had reclaimed his dignity. By the time the case was over, the jury was firmly on his side. The evidence was clear, but it was Malik's unflinching stand against mockery and prejudice that had swayed them. When the verdict was read, guilty, the room was filled with a mixture of emotions, but Malik felt at peace. He had won, but more importantly, he had shown the world that no matter who you were, where you came from, or how you spoke, you had the right to stand up for yourself. As he left the courtroom, Malik didn't just feel like a lawyer. He felt like a man who had broken through every barrier set before him. He had stood up for his dignity, and in doing so, he had set an example for others to follow. In that moment, he knew his voice would never be silenced again.